This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
The truth really seems to lie beyond the barrier of people's perception. The perception of reality for most people is greater than reality itself. Think about that. I don't think most people have ever actually seen reality beyond the limitations of their perception or their mere five senses. Even when they see it, they don't believe it because, how do I say this? Humans see through the lens of their perception. That perception, created by their beliefs that were so largely crafted for them and then put into their mind. Subsequently, it got into their subconscious mind, crafted their belief system, which creates the lens of the perception that people see and view and experience the world through. I think the truth lies just beyond the boundary of most people's perception, and the lens of perception that they see through is based off of belief systems that aren't rooted in reality. And that happens so largely because we are living in a world that works so diligently to get our focus external and to have us distracted. Between religion that has humans willingly and willfully putting their power outside of themselves, looking to be led, seeking to be led, looking to be saved, needing a savior rather than taking personal responsibility and actually growing up and not needing a mommy or a daddy or something like that. And then government grabs the focus and attention of humans in a very similar way that religion does, and has humans focused externally, putting their power or giving up their power externally to themselves, has them in worship of these political leaders in a literal sense, in a very literal sense. And then there's Hollywood and television networks, mainstream media, the mainstream media on the internet, the social media on the internet, all of the flashing lights and shiny objects that basically keeps humans distracted. And then all the titties and scantily clad women and things of that nature, for both sides, men and women, that keep humans thinking and motivated from below the belt. When you think about it, the ideologies of men are so important to them that they will kill for them. Yet these ideologies are largely crafted by belief systems that are largely handed to us or indoctrinated into our minds at a stage of life or at varying stages of life where we didn't have an accurate perception of the world. We didn't have an accurate perception of anything, and to such a large degree, the types of beliefs that I'm referring to were given to us when we were children by people who we saw as our authority and the ones that knew. Therefore, when we grow up with a system of beliefs that has been so largely given to us by other people who probably didn't actually know for themselves, that crafts the lens of our perception and how we view the world and ourselves in it. I mean, when you think about the fact that most people's beliefs are based off of an indoctrination of subject matter that most people haven't actually taken the time to learn about themselves. Most of the information that is contained within most people's belief systems is so largely built around, based on indoctrination that was given to them when they were at a lower state of awareness, consciousness, still developing, still figuring out the world, trying to figure out the world. And if those beliefs are given to us by people who themselves did not know, and were just re-indoctrinating their own offspring with the same systems of beliefs that their parents had, look at how this thing feeds on itself, where we keep feeding perpetual ignorance in this world. And then the rulers of this world understand how that process works and capitalize on it in every area of our society, of our lives, of our development, and every place where we are weak because this dynamic has been unfolding in our world. I mean, most people are unaware of indoctrination. What it means, what it is, what it does, where the information that's indoctrinated into the mind goes. And then most people won't, or can't see beyond the barrier of those beliefs, or don't have the ability to see through any other lens than the lens that has been built by those systems of beliefs. having never actually, in most cases, taken the time to do any independent research, study, scholastic, this, that, or the other, deep dives, going down rabbit holes to investigate the things that are contained within our belief systems for themselves. I think this is what creates a vast chasm between the conscious and the unconscious, between those who are awake and those who are still in a deep fucking slumber. And sadly, whether it's ignorant parents, malicious preachers, teachers, whatever, that kind of stuff, the other mechanisms that indoctrinate our mind or craft and hand beliefs to the human animal is the television, mainstream media, Hollywood. In today's world, social media is playing a big factor in that. And when you start looking at what these mechanisms are, and then down to who runs and controls those mechanisms of information flow, all of a sudden, and that's Jews, by the way, all of a sudden, things become a little bit more clear. Most people's perceptions are built on beliefs that were given to them when they were young as children by parents that probably didn't know themselves, or by the TV, Hollywood, religion, some political shit, I guess, social media. And look at the world. Look at the state of consciousness, awareness, knowledge, care in the world right now. I mean, when you turn around and look at 2020, interesting, hindsight is always 2020, right? Well, it's not always 2020. As long as you learn the lessons along the journey, once the journey's over and you look back to the degree that you found, saw, and absorbed the lessons, will you then develop the clarity to see in hindsight with 2020 vision, so to speak. And considering the fact that most people are still walking around in masks, hindsight for them is not 2020. Or they haven't stopped to turn around and look. And if they have stopped to turn around and look, all of a sudden they're going to be faced with the fact that they were stupid fools, that they were ignorant, that their ignorance was capitalized on and taken advantage of, that their minds were so weak and soft that they were socially programmed by talking heads on the television. Just looking at the global manipulation, the economic devastation, and monopolization, and how that has reared its head. Just looking at the social engineering that's come from the masks, social distancing, how the media is in on it, all the corporations, the big chains for sure, all the medical industries, the military, both sides of the goddamn government, they're all in on it. Pharmaceutical industry's in on it. Every goddamn industry that stands to make a massive amount of fucking profit, they're all in on it. And then the small to medium businesses, for a handful of reasons, are either choosing to not open, they've been economically devastated so they can't, or if they do open, many of them have a policy that makes people wear masks in their businesses. So just so that they can make money, they literally are kowtowing to the tyrannical government hoax that is being imposed upon the world by the Satanist, child-raping, child-sacrificing, all that shit. As I said in my video where I basically popped my cork, these are the people that are doing this to us, and the world still doesn't get it. I mean, when you sit and think about how weaponized the television, social media, Hollywood have become in the process of crafting people's beliefs and shit, instilling fear in the masses, when you start looking at how cops have been used as weapons against the people, Antifa's been used as a weapon, BLM's been used as a weapon, social justice warriors are their own useful idiots in and of themselves. Look back at 2020 and see how many useful idiots there were. I mean, for anybody that's awake, for anybody that sees what's going on and gets it, start realizing that prior to 2020, the useful idiots, the dumb unthinking herd animals, the NPCs, all of the people in that category that we would consider lesser beings, lesser humans, subhumans, because they're not functioning fully at a full human level yet, these people were unleashed upon the world. And these useful idiots have so much power, and I say that in quotes, that they created and caused anxiety for the other people, the lesser aware, or hey, even those who were aware, that did not want to deal with being attacked or accosted by some fucking masked Nazi asshole that would generally be in the age range of 18 to 25, some young fucking punk who knows nothing on the grand whole of like knowing life and how the world works and all that other shit. That's what I mean. It's more of a general term, but most people should get what I mean. They know nothing. Yet they're the ones that are on the quote-unquote front lines unwittingly, but still willfully, being the quote-unquote social police for the very Luciferian, baby-raping, child-sacrificing, adrenochrome-drinking pieces of shit. And because they're so stupid, because they're so fucking ignorant, so naive, they have absolutely no fucking idea that what they are doing is actually working for the quote-unquote devil. And they don't even know it. And to tell them that that is the case, they'll argue with you, tell you that you're wrong, call you a conspiracy theorist, or a myriad of other things that will come out of these fucking ignorant animals' mouths. And it's the young ones that are the lion's share, in my experience. That doesn't mean that there aren't people who are my age and older that are also fulfilling the same type of role, being the useful idiot, thinking that they have the right to police anybody else relevant to masks. People that are too fucking stupid, like stupid, to realize that if this corona thing was a real thing, that the actual thing that is in the human body, under the context of this example where it's a real thing, it's so much smaller than the mask actually filters. That there's a disconnect in that logic for all these fucking mask tards. I don't know what the official numbers are. It's like the quote-unquote virus 1 micron, and these masks only filter up to, or, things that are up to or bigger than 4 or 5 microns. Something along those lines where everything that we're experiencing is the most absurd shit. And those of us that see it are having to suffer through this fucking ridiculous Twilight Zone-esque experience of life that has now been imposed up everybody's fucking asses because of the amount of useful fucking idiots that are out there, that are lapping from the trough of the mainstream media, that are playing, oh my God, I'm afraid. The ones that aren't thinking for themselves, can't think for themselves, and cannot function unless they get their version of reality set in that trough for them to feed from. Incapable of thinking for themselves, incapable of coming to their own conclusions, incapable of guiding or leading themselves and their behavior. And it's fucking sad because all that we have been dealing with from the government, from mainstream media, and every other fucking mechanism of information is lies, deception, double speak, triple speak, quadruple speak, and however many other versions of that apply, speaking out of all sides of their motherfucking mouths. And it's just like, how do you not recognize that for what it is? How do you claim to be an intelligent human being and not recognize that for what the fuck it is? I mean, think they live. We are literally seeing something that is the manifestation of that, a scenario unfolding that is paralleling that so well. How could, what is his name, John Carpenter? How could he have nailed what we're seeing so well in a movie that was done in the late fucking 80s? And what they're really doing is keeping people locked and trapped in fear. Fear that manifests in a myriad of different ways. Fear of each other, fear of think about it. The terrible terrorists after 9/11. The Taliban that we never saw. The terrible ISIS people that we never saw. That they were just constantly beating us over the head with. This nameless, faceless terrorist that we needed to be in fear of, and that because of the threat, that we needed to let government do what it did to, or just allow it and not stop them, to implement what clearly, in retrospect, is tyrannical control. The paramilitarization of police, the training of police across the country by Israeli military, who has the most abysmal fucking record of human rights violations and killing children and sniping children and all kinds of other shit. It still makes no sense to me why, if American police needed to be trained by military for whatever fucking reason, why we, meaning America, wouldn't use the American military to do such a thing. I mean, we use our military to go into other countries and train fucking rebels, right? We have special forces in all the branches of our fucking military. Why in the fuck would not American military forces train American police in tactics and maneuvers and all that? If, in fact, fucking civilian police actually needed to be trained in such things. How or why in the fuck would the United States government use Israeli military that has the record that it does, that's doing to the Palestinians, what it's been doing to the Palestinians? But, hey, nobody's got an answer to that question. I mean, I know the fucking answer to that question. Our entire government's been taken over by Zionist fucking Jews. Many of them have dual citizenship. They're actually members of fucking government. And the fact that this is actually happening and unfolding in America, and the vast majority of the fucking herd doesn't see it and is completely clueless. This is like imperceptible to these people. And I just wonder how the fuck I managed to slip through the cracks and have a working mind, think for myself, I just, because it's like a curse at this point. The point was, they did what they did after 9/11 under the pretenses of the nameless, faceless boogeyman that we can't see. Move forward basically 20 years, and now there's something else that we need to be afraid of. We need to allow them to do everything that they're doing to fundamentally change our world and societies and all those things, under the pretenses, yet again, of a threat that we can't see. So because we can't see it, and most people are used to getting their information from their authorities and not thinking for themselves and concluding things for themselves, well, we see this shit unfolding again. Meaning another wave that's gone on for a fucking whole year of terrorizing the human beings, terrorizing us in all of our countries and societies, terrorizing people in their homes, with media and mainstream media constantly parroting the same horror stories that aren't true, over something that we can't see, yet again. Anyway, I'm going to shift gears. This applies, what I'm about to shift gears into, it really parallels what they're doing, but it just shows you a little bit of the nuts and bolts about how they're doing it. If you'll see. So the human being, like the first Hermetic principle, is the all is mind, the universe is mental. And that basically gives you a foundation to understand that the mind is very important. The mind is the center of the human experience. And according to that statement, the all is mind, the universe is mental, even the mind of what people consider to be God, the ultimate is this, consciousness that fractured itself. The all is mind. The all would be the ultimate is that I've referred to. The all. The all is mind. So that infers so much about the mind and its power and its creativity and lots of other implications. Now, when you think about the human being, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. We're divided in a 5-95 ratio. 5% of our mind is the conscious mind. And that's where you effectively operate, experience, and perceive reality in whatever way you experience and perceive reality. 5% of what is your mind is your conscious mind. And obviously consciousness is at varying levels for everybody. Of the 100% of mind, 5% of it is deemed conscious, the conscious mind, and the percentage that has been deemed to be used for that function is 5%. 5%. So in all that you think you are, and all that you think you know, and all that you can do, and all this that you are, that you're consciously aware of, that comes from the 5% of you that is your conscious mind. The rest, that's the subconscious mind. That's where every other aspect of you, short of the things that aren't contained in the physical vessel, like, aspects of the soul and other than that. What's contained in that 95% is everything else. Your will, your intention, your shadow self, your shadow side, childhood memories, childhood traumas, suppressed wounding of any kind at any age. When you look at this world, it seeks to distract us and have us focused externally. And it's going after that 5% of us that's conscious, that is the experiencer. And what it's doing is, on one hand, it's using all of its trickery to get our attention, our focus, to convince us to give up our power external via religion, via politics, via Hollywood, via television, via whatever mechanism it is that we're focused on, and in a sense of worship to, literally or metaphorically. And at the same time, it's got that attention and that focus. It's seeking to get your filters down so that it can then cram down the throat of your mind into the subconscious of you all of its agendas, all of its indoctrination, all of its subliminal programming. So think about it. They're captivating the mind and tantalizing and titillating the senses with all the stuff that they're doing that keeps us externally focused. And at the same time, they're doing what they can to, on the reverse path, get as much information into your head that benefits them, that disempowers you, into your head and ultimately into your subconscious mind, because they don't want you aware of it. If you're aware of it, you can get rid of it. You can shake that shit out of your brains. If you're not aware of it, it's with you. And then it becomes information that helps to form the basis of your belief systems, which crafts the lens of your perception. Why would they spend so much time, effort, money, resources, manpower, technical this? Why would they do all that they're doing to make this world set up to grab your attention and to keep you focused externally? I'm going to guess that there's a lot about ourselves in that 95% that we don't know. Just like Socrates said, and the Egyptians were saying similar things. Man, know thyself, and you will know the universe and God. They're doing all they can to prevent us from knowing thyself. Hey, knowing yourself isn't cool, right? And from the time you're, 16 until mid, late 30s, 40s, you got to be cool. Most people are concerned about being cool, being perceived as cool. And since it's not cool to be a master of mind, to be a master of your psychology, to have a masterful grasp of your emotions, to have mastered the harnessing of your will, to have diligently worked to harness and focus your intention. Well, that stuff's not cool, man. You start talking about that, and you sound like that stuffy old, stale, fuddy-duddy old person, or something like that. The power of our subconscious mind is profound. And when you realize, and you just start thinking, 5% conscious, 95% subconscious, how much more of what we actually are do you think is contained within that 95% that they're working so goddamn diligently towards preventing us from knowing about, keeping us focused outside of ourselves? You see what I'm saying? And at the same time, they've got our focus external. They're indoctrinating the ever-loving shit out of us, socially programming us, and all the other types of things that they're doing. Why do you think that might be? What might that imply or infer about what's inside of us all? And this is a piece of us, it's the biggest piece of us, and most of us have no fucking idea. Sit with that for a second. Think about what they know about how you operate, about how you're made, about your actual physical and non-physical makeup. I mean, non-physical, mind is a non-physical thing. Go and put your hands on your mind. They know all about this. So you have to ask yourself why they spend so much time, effort, money, resources, and all that type of stuff to attract the attention of the 5% of us that's conscious, the 5% of the mind that's conscious, to tantalize it, to titillate it, to keep it mesmerized, to keep it focused externally, giving up its power and all that stuff. Meanwhile, they're crafting a version of reality and getting it through the filters of your mind into your subconscious. Think about how ruthless and devious that is. Think about how malignant of a behavior that is, that they're doing it right in front of your face, but because you don't know, what are you going to do? Almost everything about you, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, is contained within the subconscious mind, the labyrinth of the subconscious mind. Your inner wounding, your inner trauma from childhood, adolescence, adulthood, or whatever, it's all contained in the subconscious mind. Memories, good or bad, from childhood, buried in the subconscious mind. Your will, your intention, largely, comes from the subconscious mind. I know you can have a conscious intention, but to a large degree, our will and our intention comes from the inner us. There's a reason that in the mystery schools and magical orders, think about it. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Do as thou will. They're talking about raw will, unbridled will. And the power of the human will, combined with the human intention, combined with the physical energy that we have in us, combined with the sexual energy that we can manipulate, we can harness, and increase it, and then unleash it for the purposes of creation. There's so much about us that we don't know and we don't understand. And I think that's why they don't want us to know this stuff, because they want to control us. When you start thinking about some of the things that I've said in the past about the inner work, about the great work, and things of that nature, I think all of that actually ties into this Kabbalic tree of life. And when I say Kabbalic, I'm talking about Kabbalah with a Q, the Hermetic version that's not run and controlled by Jews. It's a completely different tree of life than the ones the Jews actually use. The tree of life has been symbolically with humans since the days of the Sumerians. There's very few symbols that have been with humanity for that long. You can think about the swastika, and how many thousands of years, anybody that's done any research knows the swastika was a symbol that was utilized by cultures all over the world. And then Hitler got a hold of it, and look at how he tainted it. Look at what his involvement with the swastika did for the image of the swastika in a very short period of time. We'll now take that same principle and apply it to the Jews and the Kabbalah, and Kabbalah. That Kabbalah existed before the days of Babylon. Kabbalah existed in the ancient Egyptian Hermeticists and sages and those highly advanced people. The tree of life is depicted in Sumerian paintings or carvings or whatever you'd call it, with the Anunnaki gods standing around it with the pine cone in one hand and that little purse, looks like a purse, it's probably a battery pack or something, in the other hand, standing around the tree of life. If you look at the Egyptian carvings, depictions, murals, whatever they are, the ones in tombs or outside of the tree of life, and you have Thoth standing there, the ibis-headed god. Then there's another god, or maybe it's a goddess, with a lion head standing around the tree of life. There are Assyrian depictions of the tree of life. There are Greek depictions of the tree of life, and then the Jews adopted it. And then there are Babylonian depictions of the tree of life, and then from the days of Babylon until now. Now, when you think of the story of the Garden of Eden, I know it's all metaphor and allegory, but I'm going to just walk through it real quick because there's something that I don't think most people take into consideration. In that story, humans were told not to eat of the tree, or eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Clearly, those trees weren't held away from us. They weren't guarded or protected. We were just told, don't do it, and then walked around and did what we did in the metaphor, the analogy, the allegory, the parable of the Garden of Eden story. Well, we ate of the tree, we, Adam and Eve, aka humanity, humans, and acquired, whatever, the knowledge of good and evil. And we were chastised and cast out for that, having never had the opportunity to partake of the fruit of the tree of life. In the allegory, Lucifer told Adam and Eve, eat of that fruit, and surely you will not die. But he never actually mentioned, and by the way, you also need to go over to this tree and eat from that fruit. He only gave humans a half-truth and did not open their mind or their perception to the fact that you must also eat from the tree of life. I believe that since the fruit that Adam and Eve ate from came from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that the tree of life is also a tree containing knowledge. Now, when you start looking into what the tree is from the Hermetic, Kabbalistic perspective, you start looking at the fact that this is the stuff that's taught in mystery schools. This is the stuff that's taught in alchemical schools, Hermetic schools, Gnostic schools, and a handful of other schools of philosophy, if you will. The tree of life, when you look into it, it is a really deep subject matter. The Sephiroth, there are 10 of those. Each one of them represents different energies. You could take the planets and place them over the Sephiroth for the archetypal energies that are present in each of the Sephiroth. You can take tarot cards and place them over the Sephiroth. You can take tarot cards and place them over each of the 22 paths that connect the Sephiroth. Now, if you look at the Jewish tree of life, it's got an inverted pentagram at the top half of it. If you look at the Kabbalistic Egyptian version, it does not have that. The Jews adopted it, and they placed in it their own paths, or reworked the paths. And look at everybody that's doing that version of Kabbalistic work. It's driving them all over to the left-hand path. It's driving them all over to the dark side. It's driving them all over to want to fuck children and adrenochrome and all the other horrible shit. So most people, I was one of them for a while, out of ignorance, lack of knowledge and understanding, assume that Kabbalah is Jewish, it's all Satanistic, and blah, 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 blah. And as far as the Jewish version of it, yup, you would be correct. The other version of it comes from Samaria, comes from Egypt, and on until now. I believe that this tree of life is another metaphor or an allegory, and what's contained within that tree of life is knowledge. That knowledge is knowledge of self. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and God. The process of doing the great work it encompasses a lot of different things, but it incorporates the inner work. And that inner work is the work that's necessary for any of us to achieve and attain self-mastery. And it ranges from everything from healing the inner wounding of the child, healing any inner wounding that you may have within you. It's also identifying core weaknesses and vulnerabilities within you and strengthening them. It's mental work that leads to mastery of mind. It's cleaning the clutter of the mind. It is psychological work that leads to mastery of mind and the strengthening of the mind. It is internal emotional work and strengthening that leads to emotional mastery. And when you start thinking about what is self-mastery, mastery of mind, mastery of psychology, mastery of emotion are just three components of that. When you do this inner work, when you do the great work, when you're doing, as it's referred to, the path work, it has you coming up to and breaking through the barrier of indoctrination. The barriers in your mind that have been placed there through indoctrination, and the barrier of beliefs. Belief systems that form what? What would you call it? The barriers that people just can't seem to get past. This work has people developing an organic perception, if you will, that is subject to change based off of new information that is learned rather than hanging on to a rigid, calcified system of beliefs that's not rooted in reality. The inner work and the great work and the self-mastery work is also breaking through fear barriers. And in order to do all that, you're going to have to get introduced to the 95% of you that is known as your subconscious mind. This path work, this great work, this philosopher's stone work is work on mental focus, work on focus and harnessing of the intention, work on focus and harnessing of the will, the pure will, work on harnessing and utilizing your body's energy, work on harnessing and utilizing your sexual energy, work on meditation, because this is what is generally used to get your mind into a state prepared for entering into the subconscious mind. This work has you working on pride. This work has you working on ego. This work has the human being going in and being the master of their own self-evolution. This work is the work that if I wanted you to stay a slave, I wouldn't want you to do. If I wanted you to remain part of the herd with your head down, lapping from the trough of information that I present to you, I wouldn't want you to do it. Now, something interesting is that in this so-called spiritual battle that we seem to find ourselves in and that people believe that we're in, there's a couple of rules, even though they don't seem to follow any rules. There's a few they actually do. One of them is that they have to tell us. I mean, hell, it's even a Talmudic directive. They have to tell us. They just don't have to tell us they're telling us. And since they control Hollywood and media, mass media and the television networks, they can craft it as entertainment, package it up as entertainment, put it in front of us, meet the criteria, the requirements of, hey, we told them, knowing that we'll never, ever know it, realize it, or see it. I think there's a similar process or paralleling process relevant to the great work. The knowledge has to be made available to us, but it doesn't have to be told to us that this is what this is what this will grant you. And it doesn't have to be told to us that, hey, we're going to create the whole fucking world to distract you from this information and then pervert every aspect of you that we can, from your psychology to your emotional body to your sexual body and all these other types of things. We're going to prevent you in as much as we can from ever knowing about the great work, from ever knowing about the Philosopher's Stone, from ever truly knowing what enlightenment is, from ever being interested in doing that type of work, because, hey, it's not cool now, is it? In this work, in this path work, there's lots of know thyself stuff going on there. Also, knowledge of how you are engineered and operate. Some of the stuff that I put forth in the videos of analyzing the roots of human suffering. In those videos, I went relatively deep into analyzing how we're engineered, where we're vulnerable, how we're vulnerable, so that as we do this inner work, we identify these points of vulnerability and weakness and begin to do the work that's necessary to strengthen these aspects of ourselves or to protect it. But if we don't know, we're just being bounced around like a pinball, back and forth around the Sephiros, because we're all metaphorically doing this work, whether we realize it or not, or at least doing the journey across the Sephiros. But there's a difference between being battered about in life like a pinball bouncing around between the Sephiro and versus doing a conscious, intentional, willful journey where you're conscious and aware of what point in the journey you are, which energies are present, which archetypes are present, and all this other stuff. There's a totally different outcome when one has this knowledge and works with these understandings from the perspective of self-evolution, of evolving yourself to a higher order version of human, if you will. Someone that is solid in mind, solid in psychology, solid in emotional body, that can harness their will that fast, that can focus their will, that can harness their intention, and focus their intention, harness their mental energy, harness their physical energy, harness their sexual energy, and any other aspects of ourselves that we don't know about that are contained within the 95% of us that they clearly don't want us to know about. And when you start looking at this tree of life in a contextual sense, you start to realize that it incorporates the four worlds. It incorporates the four aspects of human psychology. It incorporates multiple dimensions, if you will, of our existence, literally and metaphorically. When you start learning about the tree of life and the aspects and components of it, you start seeing that things like planetary energies apply for various Sephiroth. The tarot cards can be laid down across the path from Sephiroth to Sephiroth, and there are certain tarot cards that apply to each of the Sephiroth. The tarot cards have specific implications or meanings associated to them. It's fucking amazing. Also, your astrology can be applied to the pathwork, to the Sephiroth, and probably several other aspects, layers, or dimensions of how this tree of life fucking works and what it is. Also, when you learn about the four worlds, you learn that the astral realm is very real, and that humans have the ability to manipulate this reality most efficiently and most effectively by doing what it is that they want to do in the astral plane. Astral traveling, astral dreaming, or whatever these phrases are, humans have figured out. Lucid dreaming have figured out how to get into and tap into that astral realm and be conscious while they're doing it, manipulate things in that realm that will have a more profound effect on this 3D realm that we experience than if they were to do the same fucking things that they do in the astral realm, if they actually did them here in this manifest reality. This is some really deep shit that will take the human on some of the deepest work of self-evolution and growth that the human will ever go through. So why might this world be set up to distract us and keep us focused externally again? All of a sudden it begins to become a little bit more clear what might be really going on here. Think about it. There's so much more to what we are than we know. Why do you think they're poisoning our bodies with fluoride and chlorine in the water? And what are the odds that the pineal gland is like a fucking tractor beam for fluoride that calcifies the pineal gland? Why do you think they're poisoning our food? Why do you think they're poisoning the air? Why do you think they're doping us up with all these pharmacological drugs? Why do you think they're damaging us with all these fucking vaccines? Why do you think they're doing to us everything that they're fucking doing to us? When you start thinking about it, it lends itself to the fact that there is so much more to us than we fucking realize. And since nobody's really ever told the vast majority of us, unless or until we figure it out or stumble upon this shit for ourselves, or somebody else that we know knows more than us about a lot of shit tells us, and we're like, wow, okay, I'm going to look into that, and we figure it out, how the fuck are we ever going to know? And since the world is so hell-bent on keeping us focused externally, there's nothing out in the external world that's going to teach you about this. Nothing in Hollywood, mainstream media, television, social media, or any of that stuff. I mean, you might find a Facebook group on it or something like that, but that's nothing of real substance or significance. I think this tree of life, I think this is the key. I think this is the other tree that humans need to consume the fruit of, in whatever metaphor or allegorical sense that actually applies. I don't think the fruit of the tree of knowledge and good and evil was actually a fruit. I think it was the orgasm. I think the serpent that brought it to their attention was the kundalini energy, or the sexual energy, which moves like a serpent because it's like an electrical energy. And when you look at electrical energy, how it oscillates and moves kind of like a serpent. And the orgasm, most likely, cracked open the consciousness, cracked open the mind, and began to make humans aware. And that was something that the quote-unquote God did not want us to be. It wanted us naked and ignorant, running around constantly in worship to it, willfully in worship of it. And, in a state of ignorance and quote-unquote bliss, where you lack for nothing, you want for nothing, you need for nothing, everything's just bliss and cotton balls and roses and all that kind of stuff. No big deal, because the God, whatever it is, had itself its own little herd, private herd of energy beings willfully giving up their energy of worship and all that other stuff. Well, when they didn't do what Daddy said to do, and they stepped into knowledge because, well, we were created to be curious beings, all of a sudden, the whole story unfolded the way it did. And humans were cast out and quickly chased out of the Garden of Eden, and the cherubim, or with a fiery sword, was staked out in front of the garden so we couldn't get there. Well, I wonder if that cherubim with the fiery sword is one of these firewalls that I've been talking about that have been put in us, where we've been firewalled off. I think that might be more true to form. And that this Garden of Eden is some mental state, some psychological state, some emotional state, or a combination of all three. And because we've got this barrier to the subconscious mind, this firewall, the meditative journey is largely fruitless for many people until they do a lot of work with it, a lot of learning. I think that's indicative of a firewall. So a lot happened to us because of that. But we never were told about the tree of life. The story doesn't tell us much about the tree of life. So I guess that's it. There's a lot to say. There's a lot to process. It's a lot to think about. And it's a lot to consider. And it makes it even more especially challenging to consider it when you are Jew woke, for instance, to the degree that I am, or to the degree that many of you are, and understand what these fucking rancid, Satanist, child-raping, fucking child-sacrificing pieces of shit actually are, represent, and what they do. And the fact that Kabbalah is part of their process. But when you look at the Tree of Life and compare the Hermetic Egyptian version of the paths of the Tree of Life versus the Jewish version, which, if you see it, you can clearly tell there is an inverted pentagram in their Tree of Life at the top, above Tiphereth, up top of the Tree of Life. There is an inverted pentagram. So you tell me, no, I don't think you need to tell me, just more metaphor, what you think's really going on with the two different versions of the Kabbalic Tree of Life. And knowing what the Jews are, they're reasonably smart, aren't they? So it wouldn't be beyond possibility for them to adopt, hijack, steal this mystical Tree of Life, or the information relevant to it, and then take their mystics, their sages, their astrologers, their sorcerers, their magicians, their people in those realms, and have them rip it apart and look at it. And hey, they made some adjustments now, didn't they? They made some adjustments to tweak it for them. So, something to think about, lots of somethings to think about, food for thought, exercises for mental gymnastics, take your pick. That's what I got. Take it easy, folks.